Hare Krishna. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitan Ena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Very nice to be with all of you. We will talk a little bit about Srila Prabhupada's pastimes. When Srila Prabhupada went to the Western countries for the first time in 1965 and in the early years 65, 66 at that time, Srila Prabhupada represented an ancient, pure Vedic tradition of Chaitanya Sampradaya, and he wanted to share that knowledge. And for the young Americans who were coming to him, he was gradually telling them about philosophy and some of the principles. And one of them was to give up meat eating. You must know, in the Western countries, there is so much of rampant meat eating, and it was a big thing for people to give up. In fact, Prabhupada had these 4 principles: no intoxication, no alcohol, no coffee, tea, no cigarettes, and no meat eating, no gambling, and no illicit connection with women. And in fact, many times, some of the elderly people who came and met Srila Prabhupada, there was one lawyer who was trying to help Srila Prabhupada incorporate the society. And he said, if you have these rules, you won't be able to attract Americans. Maybe you should not have these rules at all. And Prabhupada was not ready to compromise. He said that I have come to, I represent this great tradition from India, and I want to present it as it is. And if Americans are not happy with it, I'll go back to my country. But just for the sake of Americans, just to attract them, I cannot make compromises and dilute the principles. So Srila Prabhupada was very strict about these things. But one great arsenal Srila Prabhupada had with him, and that was Krishna Prasad. So Prabhupada would cook himself. In the very early days, there was no one else. He would cook himself. And then these few of the young followers, American men and young boys and girls, and he would serve them prasadam. And some of them were gradually taking it seriously, and they had given up meat, and they were liking the prasadam that Prabhupada was making. And you must know, Srila Prabhupada was an excellent cook. And so you can imagine, when an excellent cook like Srila Prabhupada, and he prepares and then he offers it to Krishna, his dear Lord, what should be the effect, what should be the prasadam quality there? It was simply out of the world. And these young Americans, they were actually sold out on that. And they would eat a lot because, American food, Western food is quite bland, unlike Indian food, which is very spicy. And some of them began to like the spicy food, and they would eat well. And one of the devotees recalls that those days there were about 10, 12 of them who would come regularly every day There would be more when there were big gatherings. And these 10, 12 of them would come up to Srila Prabhupada's apartment, and Prabhupada would cook lunch for them. And then these young American boys and girls, they were very hungry, and they have switched over from all the meat eating and all of that to vegetarian diet. And Srila Prabhupada would make rotis and chapatis, and each one would eat about 10 to 12 chapatis. No, they must have been hungry. And Srila Prabhupada was making all of that. And then the devotees later on, they'll recall that Prabhupada was making something like 120 chapatis all alone. And he would make the dal, he would make the rice, he would make the sabji and all of that, and make it available for these young followers, his students, and they would relish that. So you can see the kind of effort and the sacrifice that Srila Prabhupada was making. He's a learned scholar. He's an author of books. He is 71 years old at that time. He's gone from India to America, from Vrindavan. In fact, those days, those young Americans, they would ask him, "What is Vrindavan like?" And Prabhupada would say, "I will take you one day and show you Vrindavan. How wonderful Vrindavan is. And you will wonder, how did Swamiji leave Vrindavan and come to this terrible place called New York City?" So that's Vrindavan. This is the way Srila Prabhupada explained. And the kind of compassion and sacrifice Prabhupada was making to spread Krishna Bhakti in a foreign land. And so like this, Prabhupada made this very delicious Krishna Prasadam, and they would be attracted to Krishna Prasadam. They would be attracted to Kirtan. They would be attracted to the philosophy Srila Prabhupada was teaching. And above all of this, they were drawn and attracted to Srila Prabhupada as a person. Very compassionate, very learned, taking all the trouble and giving all the time to explain all the nuances of the philosophy and the doubts that they would have. And so they were really drawn to Srila Prabhupada. And we talked about last time, Srila Prabhupada, much later, 1971, so it's already about 66, ISKCON was established. 71, it's about 5 years. And Prabhupada had spread to, by 1971, ISKCON, Krishna Consciousness Society, was there in every continent except Africa. And that's how Prabhupada told one of his disciples to go to Africa in 1971. And the temple was, and an ashram was set up, and deity was going to be installed. You may remember that how Srila Prabhupada, initially when devotees went to Africa, they had very good reception from Gujaratis and a few other Indian gentlemen, and well established in Africa, several generations. A lot of Indians are there in Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kenya, and a few other countries in Africa, South Africa. So they would invite the devotees, and then when Srila Prabhupada saw that you are mostly preaching to the Indians, Prabhupada said, "No, we have to preach to the natives, the local Africans." And so devotees changed their plan and the strategies, and then second time when Srila Prabhupada had gone, there were already 12 Africans who had joined the temple, and they were in the temple. And those Africans, they didn't know much about cooking, and we talked about how Srila Prabhupada, they cooked something for Prabhupada. Prabhupada said it was, Africans cooking some Indian food, and they're not trained in it, and Prabhupada called it pig food, suitable for horses, dog food. And then when all that, and then we know how Srila Prabhupada himself went into the kitchen, and all these 12 Africans were there, and he was teaching them. I want you to picture this. Africa, Nairobi, a temple there, a temple kitchen, a vegetarian kitchen, where Prabhupada is there, sannyasi, and he must be around 76 years or so, author of books, revered sannyasi from India, scholarly, and he is surrounded by 12 black Africans, and he is teaching them how to do cooking. Can you imagine this? And it was simply because of the drive that I should help them become devotees of Krishna. I'll tell you one interesting interaction that I was a witness to maybe about 20 years ago. There was quite a senior devotee of ISKCON, and I was accompanying him to Udupi, the ancient Krishna temple of Madhvacharya Sampradaya. And then we were interacting with one sannyasi, Madhva sannyasi, and this senior devotee who was with me from ISKCON, and he was talking to him, and I was trying to translate that to the language that the sannyasi can understand. And so this devotee said, Swamiji, you must come to America. There is immense preaching field. Lot of people want to hear about Krishna, and you must come, and you are all very learned sannyasis of the Madhva Sampradaya, you are all Vaishnavas. You must come and teach about Krishna to Americans and rest of the world. And so that sannyasi, Madhva sannyasi, very elderly sannyasi, very respectable sannyasi, he said, you see, if we have to come every day, every place, we will need well water. If there is no well water, we cannot come there. We cannot come do our cooking. We cannot do our puja. We cannot come to such place. So I was reflecting. You just see the contrast. Srila Prabhupada has gone to places like New York, Africa, and innumerable other Western cities. And Prabhupada, surrounded by these Westerners, he has convinced them to become vegetarians. He's teaching them how to cook Indian food, how to offer to Krishna, how to make it Krishna Prasadam, change their lifestyle. Look at the compassion. Look at the sacrifice that Srila Prabhupada is making to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Compared to, of course, they're all very respectable sadhus are there in our country, very respectable sannyasis, sadhus, and different mutts and different organizations are there. But just see at such an advanced stage, the kind of sacrifice that Srila Prabhupada is making. This is something, extraordinary that Srila Prabhupada did. I must share another very interesting conversation that happened among the devotees in our temple here in Bangalore just a few months ago. Bangalore temple devotees, we were all talking. It was in some meeting, and then we strayed off into talking a few other topics other than the main topics in the meeting, formal temple meeting. The discussion came up about one other spiritual organization from our country, very well known. They also have temples around the world and a lot of followers. And then they also have a lot of their sadhus, they call them followers, they're sadhus. And then the discussion came up that how these sadhus of this organization, I don't want to mention the organization, very respectable, nice people, well known to us also. And these sadhus of that organization, they are very austere. And then we were told that, we learned that what they do, they have a feast and they offer that on special days, like Ram Navami or something, they have their offering and they make a feast. And finally, the sadhus in the ashram, what they do is that there's a big feast. Now they mix all the feast, dal, sabji, gulab jamun, khichdi, shaak, bonda, pakoda, whatever, everything, they mix it up, mash it up like that, and then pour water and then drink it. So that they don't enjoy their senses eating good food or something like that. So, very impressive, isn't it? Very austere. So, when we were talking about this, one of the devotees in our meeting group said, wow, these sadhus, they are so austere. Oh my God, they just can't even have a feast. And they do this every day. And they have a bowl supposedly, and whatever it fills in that bowl, only that much they can take. They can't even take more than that. You can't overeat, and you have to, this kind of a mashed food you have to eat every day. Oh my God, what an austerity. And then one of the devotees who heard this very spontaneously said, my God, next time I see these sadhus, I'll offer my pranams to them and tell them, whoa, hats off to the austerity that you are practicing. Then another devotee commented, look at what Srila Prabhupada is offering us. Srila Prabhupada has offered us a spiritual life where we also make very nice, elaborate feast, offer to the Lord, and we also relish Krishna Prasadam with all of the variegatedness. And after having enjoyed this wonderful Krishna Prasadam, Srila Prabhupada is offering us a state of consciousness far, far higher than all of these other sadhus and spiritual organizations are offering. So, Unnata Ujjvala Rasa Swabhakti Shriyam. This is what the Acharyas have explained. Unnata Ujjvala Rasa. This is the Krishna Bhakti Rasa that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is teaching, is so extraordinary. It is the highest aspects of Krishna Bhakti. And Srila Prabhupada is offering that and also a delicious meal. So if you are saying that you have to offer obeisance or pranams to those sadhus, what you should do to Srila Prabhupada? And everyone said, yes, we should offer our lives to Srila Prabhupada, and even that's not enough to repay what Srila Prabhupada has given us. So, Krishna consciousness that Srila Prabhupada was teaching around the world, was something, it's a most elevated state of consciousness that the Vedic literatures talk about. Unnata, Ujjvala, Rasa, Swabhakti Shriya. And that is the treasure. This is a treasure in the Vedic literatures. And that treasure in the Vedic literatures was not known to many people. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu brought out that treasure, and he wanted people to experience that. And it was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire that this treasure from the Vedic literatures is shared with the whole world. Everywhere in the world there are seekers. There are people who are looking for spiritual truth, spiritual knowledge, spiritual understanding. And it is the duty of Indians to share this wealth, this treasure from the Vedic literatures. When Srila Prabhupada went to America in 1965-66, one of the things that a common theme that Srila Prabhupada would come across was there was one other spiritual organization from India, Maharshi Mahesh Yogi, and he had popularized what was known as TM, Transcendental Meditation. So many of Srila Prabhupada's young American followers, they were all formerly, they had had some kind of an exposure to transcendental meditation, and invariably in the question answer session with Srila Prabhupada, they would bring up these questions about TM, transcendental meditation, and what is meditation, and all of these kind of topics would very often come. And so Srila Prabhupada was hearing about transcendental meditation and Maharshi, and he also had established many centers in Western countries, in America, in Europe, and other places. And so Prabhupada had heard about that quite often. And a few other organizations like that, but definitely Maharshi Mahesh Yogi's transcendental meditation was quite well known among the young Americans. Much later, Srila Prabhupada was in Atlanta temple. This was March of 1975. So you can imagine, 1966, the temple ISKCON was incorporated. Now we are talking about 1975. 9 years have passed. ISKCON has spread around the world, and Prabhupada has so many followers around the world. And then Prabhupada had come to Atlanta temple, and then devotees brought one young American who had become a devotee, and they introduced him to Srila Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, this is Doug, an American name, common name, Doug. This is Doug, and he is become a devotee of Krishna now, and he is in the temple now. Formerly, he was closely associated with the Maharshi Yogi's philosophy, and he was, for 2 years, his personal secretary, traveling with him, being with him, helping him in all his different activities and projects and all of that. And Maharshi had created an executive council to help him reach out to the universities and create courses and all of those kind of things. And that council was called the 108. It's not that it had 108 people, but it was called the 108. And Doug was a member of, one of the members in that 108, the executive council and all of those kind of things. So Prabhupada heard about that one, and then after a little while of some discussion, Prabhupada became interested. So, how long you have been with Mahesh Yogi? And then he called him aside, come this side. And then Prabhupada began to talk to him a little more closely and trying to understand. And then Doug began to explain that how he got involved. For that was about maybe 6 years or so, he was involved with them. And he helped them establish a center, Mahesh Yogi's center, and all of those kind of things. And then Doug mentioned, because ISKCON and Krishna consciousness was also spreading in America, and Mahesh Yogi's organization was also spreading. And invariably, with Mahesh Yogi, there would be questions about what is Krishna consciousness, who is Krishna? And Mahesh Yogi was a little bit silent in most of those kind of questions. He would evade. And so Doug felt that way, at least he felt that way, that he was not coming to those questions and he was evading the issues like that. And then that would go on, and sometimes Doug would ask him, what is the highest truth? And many of his followers, close followers who were with him, they would ask, what is the highest truth? And then sometimes Mahesh Yogi would say that he was conversing with God. And then they would ask him, who is God? Who is Krishna? These questions would often come up, and then he would not give a very, very straightforward answer. And they were waiting for him. Someday he may give an answer or something like that. So there was one time Maharshi was in the mountains. That's what Doug explains. We don't know where in the mountains, which mountains, maybe Europe somewhere, something like that. We don't have enough information. And so he was in the mountains, and he was deeply involved in some kind of a meditation, and he was writing some notes on Brahma Sutras and those kind of things. And there were only a few very intimate, close followers with him, and Doug was there too. And so after a few days of going away to the mountains and silence and Brahma Sutras and meditation on all of that, he came back. And then Doug is telling this to Prabhupada. I asked him, what is the highest, what have you understood from the meditation and Brahma Sutras and all of that? What is that? What is the highest state of consciousness? Because Maharshi always talked about states of consciousness and higher states of consciousness, cosmic consciousness and all of that. So he asked him, what have you found out from your meditation? So in the mountains and meditation and notes on the Brahma Sutras and all. And Maharshi Mahesh Yogi, he said, the highest state of consciousness is Krishna consciousness. And the followers were all shocked, and Doug was shocked to hear that. And then after a little while, he started moving away, and then he got in touch with some devotees and got to read Srila Prabhupada's books, and he became kind of a devotee, and then he had joined the temple, and all of that had happened. So Prabhupada very interestingly heard the whole thing, and how Maharshi had mentioned that the highest state of consciousness was Krishna consciousness. And so it is a fact. Somehow it was maybe good fortune that Maharshi also had realized that. And of course there was some discussion that whether Prabhupada should meet him, and they could organize that meeting and all of that. Prabhupada sort of encouraged. He said, yes, we can. But then he has already popularized his process, his method. We don't know whether anything fruitful will come out of this meeting, and nothing happened about it. So like this, we can see how Srila Prabhupada was creating this kind of an impact and influence of Krishna consciousness all over the world. Now, it's interesting, what was Prabhupada doing? Why was he doing all of these things? Setting up Krishna temples, and writing books, and having so many followers, and traveling around the world, and all of these kind of things. We will get a little bit of an understanding of what was the background from one interesting story that happened. This was in the 1980s. I remember I was a young devotee in 1980s. I was in college, and I was taking to Krishna consciousness. There used to be a magazine, or even now we have a magazine in ISKCON called the Back to Godhead. It was a very colorful magazine in the 1980s. It's not exactly the same format it is now. And at that time, Srila Prabhupada's biography was just coming out. Only the first volume, or maybe the second volume, was released around that time. And an excerpt of that, of the Lilamrita, was coming in a serialized form in the Back to Godhead magazine those days. So there was an article called A Lifetime in Preparation. It's the first volume of Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita. We know that. So there was an article on that book. And one day in the ISKCON Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir, you should remember 1980s, it's not exactly the way it is now. Those days it was a small temple, big temple hall, but not the big palace, the big palatial temple that's coming up now. It was in a different situation. And there was only Radha Madhav deities those days. The Ashtasakis had not come. They came a little later. So, one Bengali gentleman, he came to the temple in Mayapur, and he was holding this Back to Godhead magazine. And he called a few devotees, and he said, I want to talk to somebody about. And then the few devotees gathered around him. And then he started telling the story. He was from a temple in Shantipur. Shantipur is a small town when you travel from Calcutta to Mayapur on the highway. A little away from the highway is a small town called Shantipur. That is where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's senior associate Advaita Acharya used to live. That was the residence of Advaita Acharya in Shantipur. So even now there is a temple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Advaita Acharya, and this particular Bengali devotee who had come from Shantipur, he was one of the Sevaite meaning one of the those who render services there and one of the priests there. And he was from that temple. And so he started telling, he told to these devotees, ISKCON devotees in Mayapur temple, he said that in the 1940s and 1950s, I was there at that time too, in the Shantipur temple, and I was a pujari. And now and then, I would see one person, about middle-aged person, 1940, 1950, and he would wear a khadi dhoti and a khadi kurta, and he would sit at the far side of the rear side of the temple, far away from the altar, and I would see him chanting, very, very intently, absorbed in chanting Hare Krishna. And he would chant alone. He wouldn't talk much to anybody. And he would come on the weekends, and he would be there for a few hours, and then he would be seen sitting and very intently chanting. And as a pujari, he would move around, and then he would see. And then he also saw that there were times when he saw this Bengali gentleman in khadi dress, white dress, and he would be chanting, and there were tears in his eyes as he is chanting. And he wouldn't disturb him because he was silently sitting and chanting. But then, just before he left, after his chanting, he would come and meet him, and with folded hands, and then and appreciate him that you're doing puja here in this temple, very important temple. And then I also wouldn't talk too much because he looked like he wanted to be to himself, and then he would go away. And every now and then, 40s, 50s, he would see this middle-aged person come and chant for a few hours, and with tears in his eyes, very feelingly chant and go away. Then, for some time, he stopped seeing him. He was not coming at all. And then he remembers, it was August of 1965. So this Sevite, Pujari, he was doing his puja, he was attending to the temple, and suddenly he saw at the far end of the temple, once again, that same person has come, but now he is in saffron robes. And so he saw him, and then he was sitting not in white khadi kurta and khadi dhoti, but now he is in saffron dress. And he was chanting. And on that particular day, he chanted for a long time. And then, so he didn't disturb him. And then he came after the chanting, he came and he paid obeisance to the deities there. And he paid obeisance, unusually long obeisance. And then he, as a pujari, he was watching all that. And then he talked to him, and then he spoke to him and he said, "Yes, I see you are the same person who used to come before." And then he asked him, "What is your name? Who are you?" And then that saffron-clad sadhu, sannyasi, he said, "My name is Bhaktivedanta Swami, and I have been ordered by my revered spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, and he has given me an impossible mission to accomplish. He has asked me to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. And I'm completely helpless, and I don't know how I can ever do this. And I come here because this is an important place, Advaita Acharya's home. This is where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, and Advaita Acharya, all three of them would sit here in this house, and they would be scheming and planning how to spread love of Krishna everywhere in the world. This is where the discussions would happen. They would be planning how we can inundate the world with love of Krishna. And so this place is very special. So I come here and chant, praying for their mercy, praying for their direction. How I can ever accomplish this impossible mission my Guru Maharaj has asked me to do, to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. And tomorrow, from Calcutta, I am boarding a ship, and I'm going in a ship to America. And so I wanted to come here, seek the blessings of Advaita Acharya. And so I came here today. And then he offered his obeisance to that pujari. And the pujari said, no, you're a sannyasi. How can you pay obeisance to me? And no, I need your blessing. And so that I can accomplish this impossible mission of my Guru. So, and then he went away. And he didn't see anyone. So all of this is the narration of that pujari, the Sevaite from Advaita Acharya's temple home and Shantipur. And then he's telling. So after that, I didn't see him at all, that sadhu. I was wondering what happened to him, where he is. And then another thing started happening. Now and then I started seeing Americans, men and women, sari-clad, dhoti-clad men with japamala, and they started coming to our Advaita Acharya's home, Shantipur temple. And I've seen them coming in small groups, big groups, and chanting Hare Krishna, all of that. And so one of them, recently when they came, they gave me a magazine. And he was holding the Back to Godhead magazine. I cannot read much English, but then I looked around and I saw the picture of the same sadhu who would come there, that's sit in the back of the temple and who would be chanting feelingly with tears in his eyes. His picture there, and it said that, and he's the founder of this temple and all of these things, organization, all of this I heard. And then I decided that I must come. And they invited me, they gave me this magazine and they invited me to come to the Mayapur temple. So I decided I must go one day and I must share this story. And now you can see how Srila Prabhupada from 1940, 1950, 1965, all those years when Prabhupada was a grihastha and later on Prabhupada became a sannyasi, all along he was chanting and praying for the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Acharya. For what? Because his guru, his spiritual master had given him an order that you must take Krishna consciousness, Krishna bhakti to everyone in the world who are seeking spiritual life. Because this is the highest treasure in the Vedic literatures. This is the highest state of consciousness that one can ever achieve. And this is the treasure in the Vedic literatures brought out by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it was the desire of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Acharyas that this should go all over the world. And now you see how Srila Prabhupada, for preparing himself for so long, according to the will of the Lord, and then in 1965 going to America and going to the park and chanting Hare Krishna, attracting the young Americans, cooking chapatis for them, 120 chapatis, and making delicious prasadam, giving to them, going from continent to continent and going to Africa, and there getting the Africans to become devotees, to make them chant Hare Krishna. This is an incredible story of Srila Prabhupada, isn't it? What a great Acharya. How much he wanted to sacrifice. How much he sacrificed to spread Krishna Bhakti all over the world. This is the story of Srila Prabhupada, an ever-inspiring story. And all of the things that Srila Prabhupada is so wonderful. So it is not just another sadhu, innumerables. There are, of course, very respectable sadhus in our country, but Srila Prabhupada, the knowledge he had, the message he carried, the bhakti that he had for Krishna, that he wanted to share, and the compassion he showed, and the sacrifices he made, still sticking on to all of the principles strictly as per the Vedic culture, and spread Krishna Bhakti around the world. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.